Dames en heren, goedemiddag.
Hoi hoi, hello and welcome to the Meet Maastricht podcast. I'm Katrina and together with our resident local Lucy, we will be exploring some of the amazing stories that make Maastricht so special. So sit back, relax and join us as we learn about our favourite Dutch city. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 8 of the Meet Maastricht podcast. This is part 2 of our special with Joes on Remembrance Day and Liberation Day. So if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I definitely recommend giving that a listen. But in the meantime, sit back and enjoy the second part of our very special series on the Liberation of Maastricht. So I know Remembrance Day is on Monday. What usually is there a specific type of celebration that or remembering that happens on that day in the Netherlands? Oh, and in Maastricht specifically?
There is a monument in Maastricht on the Vrijheidsplein, so that's near the Groene Loper, and it's usually it's in front of there, but there's also the Herdenkingsplein, and the Remembrance sometimes takes place there. But I have to say that I've lived in Belgium for 6 years, and in Belgium, the Second World War is a war of minor interest. It's that way in most European countries. And I think the Netherlands are pretty unique, because most unique countries remember the First World War. So that's on the 11th of November. I don't know if there's Remembrance Day in Australia as well.
Yes, on the 11th of the 11th.
On the 11th of November, yeah. So that's the worldwide Remembrance Day. And, well, the Netherlands can't have it because we were neutral. Right. During the First World War. So that's very sad. So yeah, we have.
Yeah. So you have a separate Remembrance Day.
Yeah. So we have a separate one. Yeah. It's a little bit like today when everybody on the whole world has a day off, except for the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It's the 1st of May today. Yeah.
And is it a coincidence that it's the day before Liberation Day, or is that?
No, I think that's not a coincidence. But I don't know when this was installed. The Dode Herdenking. Yeah. Because many times the first time was in 1946, but it only began like for real against racism and everything from 1981. So there's always a very nice history to these kind of days.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So the first Remembrance Day was on the 9th of May in Amsterdam.
Okay.
But that was of course no National Remembrance Day. I don't know how old this is. Because you always tend to think that this was installed right after the war. That we've been doing this for this is the 75th time we're going to have a Remembrance Day, but that's not necessarily so.
No, well, I think sometimes if it's too close, then it would feel strange for people to be doing things. It's sometimes you need the distance, I think, for a lot of that. And so Liberation Day, is that just celebrated in Maastricht, or is that a Netherlands-wide?
No, that's a Dutch tradition. Yeah.
Is there anything special that usually happens on Liberation Day?
There's festivals. I believe there's festivals, but I can imagine that's an old tradition. I think that's something of the last 20 years.
Yeah, I know. Last year, me and my partner were just walking into the city to get groceries or something, and there were tanks and people dressed in 1940s clothing and
was this the 5th of May or was this
I don't know.
Last year 13th 14th September?
I'm not sure.
That was the actual 1775th memorial year of the liberation. So there was this ticker tape parade, and there were even veterans from the war. But that's not normal.
I think we got the end tail of it. We were very we weren't expecting it at all, so we sort of turned the corner onto the Vreethof, and there were big tanks everywhere, and we were very confused.
Yeah, there's a war going on. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and everyone's reverted back to 1940s hairstyles. But yeah, so that was the probably 75th anniversary.
I think so. Yeah, there was also a show on the Vrijheidsplein.
Okay.
About the liberation.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Is there anything that you haven't spoken about that you'd like to?
Oh, well, there's lots of things that happened, of course, in Maastricht during the Second World War. There's also lots of nice small anecdotes that I could share with you.
Yeah.
But there is this lovely story about the Church of Schaven in Maastricht. And this church was built by a pastor named Jansen. And he was trying to grasp to get some money to build his church in the 30s. But this didn't really do anything, and he got some money, but he only used this money for the outside of the church. So there was no interior when the church opened in 37. Everybody saw this, and then this pastor was a very, very smart guy. He told the bishop, well, you see, there's no interior. I need to get some more money. But the bishop said, no, you can't get any more money. And then he wrote to the Minister of Binnenlandse Zaken, Internal Affairs, can I get some money? You can't get some money. You should have used the money you had. So this guy is thinking, well, how can I get money for my Catholic church for Anthony of Padua? All of a sudden thinks it's 37, so the war has not yet started. Benito Mussolini has a mother, and this mother loves Anthony of Padua. So he writes Benito and says, well, I've built this wonderful church for the lovely Anthony of Padua, but I don't have any money for the interior, so could you please help? And Benito writes back, of course I will help you. If you come to Rome, we can figure this out. So Pastor Jansen goes on a train to Rome and has to wait for Benito in this very big room with a curtain right in the middle. And he has to wait. So Benito is on the other side, he thinks, but he doesn't know. And he has to wait. And then he thinks, I'm done with waiting. I'm going to remove this curtain. So he pulls away the curtain, and there he is, the most famous man of Italy, Benito Mussolini, and he is talking to his Minister of Economics and of mining businesses. And the Pastor Jansen introduces himself, says, I am the pastor who sent you the letter. Ah, yes, says Benito, I remember. This is my Minister of Economic Affairs, and he will go with you to Carrara, and there you can find some marble that you can have. So Jansen went to Carrara and bought 14,000 kilos of Cipollino Apuana marble, which is the best marble you can get. It's a beautiful green marble. And this was a gift from Benito Mussolini to this pastor. Yeah. But then there was the next issue, because he had to ship this marble from Rome to Rotterdam. Yeah. And in Rotterdam he's going to have to pay for this. So he calls the minister in the Netherlands. Do I really have to pay for this marble that is a gift for my church, and I'm very poor and it's a very poor neighborhood and blah, 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 blah. So he gets the marble for free in Maastricht, completely for free. And by then it was about 40,000 guilders, which would now be way over that. And now you might think that Pastor Jansen was a fascist himself, but this was not the case. He did not have a bell in his tower because he was too poor to buy a bell. So instead he put some great big speakers in his tower, and that way he could actually play songs from his church. And sometimes he would play the Dutch national anthem, the Wilhelmus.
Wow.
Which was, of course, not allowed under the Nazi regime. So he played the song, and then there were soldiers on his doorstep who told him, you can't just play the Wilhelmus. And they tried to arrest him, but then the pastor went inside, got the letter from Mussolini, and said, you can't arrest me. I'm one of the best friends of Benito Mussolini. Look, here's a letter from Benito. And then they saw this handwriting and his sign, of course, and then the pastor was never ever arrested.
Wow.
So I think that's one of the most beautiful stories of the Second World War. Well, actually, it's taken place before the World War, but
yeah, is that still something you can see, or
you can still visit the church, and you can still see the green marble. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. It must have weighed so much.
14,000 kilos. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. In the middle of the Great Depression, in already torn Europe, this guy just walks into a meeting of Benito Mussolini and his ministers and asks for marble. It's great.
Yeah.
Very Dutch also.
You can imagine people's faces when he's... I don't know how they got to Rotterdam to Maastricht, but they must have come on,
By train, I think.
By train. People's faces when they see thousands of kilograms of green marble coming into Maastricht.
Yeah, it must have been...
we can't buy food, but this guy can buy green marble.
Right.
Yeah, wow, amazing. So did Maastricht didn't go through the winter of the starvation that other places did? No.
No.
Why was that? Was that...
Well, partly it's because there's very good soil here. So I don't know if do you have a garden?
I have a balcony, so no.
You have a balcony,
there are plenty of examples of people growing things. As I say, I live in St. Peter, so there's fields everywhere. Things, all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in Maastricht we're on Lus. So Limburg is on Lus, and that's one of the most fertile soils you can get.
Okay.
And up north, it's sea. So there's sea clay. And there's grass growing on it, but you can't get any plants out of it.
Mm.
Well, you can get some plants out of it, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And if you have a small garden in Maastricht, you can provide for yourself if you want to, with the right knowledge and with a little effort. But up north, it's impossible.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really interesting.
So you can get your potatoes out of the ground there, and for us, it's very normal to eat your potatoes like that. But if you really, really, really have to work for your potatoes, and there's a harsh winter, then there's no food. There was a Dutch nature in the 19th century, like a club of gentlemen's club that would investigate or research Dutch nature. And Limburg was taken out of this because the nature in Limburg is not Dutch.
Oh, they've just cut you off.
they cut us off. Is there anything at all that you would like to know? So maybe there's something. Is there an anecdote about this or about that? And maybe I can.
I guess something that I was interested in regards to the liberation was how they dealt with the bridges being gone, because that's something that I think has been vital to Maastricht since Maastricht's inception as a thing. But you said the bridges, were all of the bridges destroyed at that point?
So in the 40s, there's only 3 bridges, which is the Salvatius Bridge, the old bridge, and then there's the new bridge, which people like me still call the new bridge, the Wilhelmina Bridge, and then there's the rail bridge. And there's this wonderful story because the Germans, when the Germans attacked Maastricht in 1940, well, they attacked the Netherlands. Maastricht was one of their focal points, so they had to take the bridges of Maastricht. And I don't know if you know anything of the state of the Dutch army in the 1940s.
No, I don't know.
No, it was pretty non-existent. The Netherlands had one tank. It was one tank in the Netherlands, and it was an old British tank. And they had no idea how to use this tank. So they drove it into a sloot. So you know sloot? That's like the water that's in between the polders in Holland. Okay. So if you have sea and then you pump the water out of it, but you still have to have this small canal, actually. It's a very small canal. So they drove the tank into this very small canal, and they took a picture of it, and they put it in newspapers all over the world, and it said, "Tanks cannot drive in the Netherlands." There we have it. We're safe forever, they thought. And then the Germans attacked, and they bombed Rotterdam, and then the Netherlands capitulated. But in between that, the Germans also tried to get the bridges of Maastricht, as you said. And Maastricht had one of, and I believe 3 anti-tank guns in the Netherlands, and the German army came from where now the tunnel is under the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
So near the station, they crossed the railroad there, and one of the first tanks got hit by the anti-tank gun and fell on its side in the Hoogbrugstraat, and that slowed down the entire German army of the Western Front for 45 minutes, because they had to get a truck from the back of the army, drive it up to the front, get the tank out of the way, and then they could push on through. So the Dutch soldiers, they shot one tank, and then they swam across the river to the Maastricht side, and in the meantime they could demolish the small parts. So the Salvation Bridge has this metal part,
yeah,
and this has always been the part that could be demolished to prevent enemy armies crossing. So they demolished that part, and they demolished one part of the Wilhelmina Bridge and one part of the railway bridge. But they've done it quite sloppy, and the Germans could there's this dam connecting the Salvation Bridge and the Wilhelmina Bridge, and they just put a bridge through this dam, and then from there they could take over the city. The Dutch army was not at all prepared for a German attack.
So the Dutch army destroyed the bridges themselves?
Yes, of course. That's always what they do. That's always what they do.
Yeah.
Because you want to slow down the enemy.
It's hard to imagine without being able to cross the river.
No, but the Germans put down a bridge right when they the same day.
Okay.
Maastricht was taken in one day by the Germans.
Yeah. So people weren't without a bridge for very long.
No, and it was repaired fairly quickly. And you can repair a bridge with little means, and then later on you can. And of course, these bridges were new. In Maastricht, so the old bridge was the only bridge until, I believe, from the railway, I believe until 1932, when the Wilhelmina Bridge was built.
Yeah.
And when the Wilhelmina Bridge was built, the Salvatius Bridge was deconstructed completely, which happened every 100 years or so, and was rebuilt a little wider.
Okay.
And this reconstruction has also been a saving of the bridge, because how do you call these bows in the bridge? Bow? Yeah. So they look like bows, but they are actually concrete eggs that go down the river, so you can't see the downside. But of course, an egg shape is very, very strong, and these eggs, concrete eggs, were preserved when the Germans demolished the bridge, which they did a lot better than the Dutch did, which means that they just blew them to pieces. So yeah, that's so the people were used to having to cross a bridge that where they're working on. If the bridge is demolished, but 5 years ago it's a new bridge. It's not the old bridge. For us, it is, but for the people who had seen the bridge being deconstructed and being built up again, they knew better.
Yeah. So then, when the Americans came and they had to rebuild them again.
Yeah, the Americans had this system called Bailey Bridge.
Yeah.
It's a Bailey Bridge, and that is very easy to put over a river. So you can, and this was used on the Liberation of Maastricht on the 14th of September. So, like I told you, week was liberated on the 13th, but it was too dark to put out the Bailey Bridge.
Yeah.
So then the next day they could cross the river.
Yeah.
Of course, this only works if it's a calm, canalized river, which the Meuse is. And then they started reconstructing the other bridges, and of course there were small boats transporting people from one side to the other. And you shouldn't forget how very fast people adapt to a new situation.
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen that recently.
Yeah,
with
indeed.
The new normal.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and then there's a little bickering, but well, it's you have no choice.
No, you get on with it.
Yeah, the bridge has been destroyed. Yeah, the bridge has been destroyed. Yeah, we'll rebuild it. That's okay.
Yeah, especially by that point, it's old news.
Right.
Well, thank you for listening today, and thank you, Yus, for coming on our podcast. We're very happy to have you. Hopefully, you may be back in the future. We don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and we hope everyone has a lovely Remembrance Day and Liberation Day, and that everyone is staying safe, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us today, and don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook by searching Meet Maastricht and on Instagram at @meet_Maastricht. If you would like to learn more about us, you can also visit our website at meetmaastricht.eu, where you can buy tickets and subscribe to our monthly newsletter so you're always up to date. Thanks again, and tune in next time to learn more about our beautiful city.
Tot ziens.